So here's the thing. When people talk about who invented economics, it's always the same names. Adam Smith, Karl Marx, maybe Aristotle if you were actually awake during that one philosophy lecture. But there's someone missing from that list. Someone who figured out the game almost 1,000 years before central banks, before capitalism, before anyone on Wall Street ever put on a suit. A Muslim scholar, writing in the 11th century, looked at money, looked at power, looked at human nature, and basically said, when wealth loses its moral anchor, your entire civilization is already dying. You just don't know it yet. And honestly, looking around right now, he nailed it. This is Money Never Learns, where we dig up the warnings history buried and find out why nobody ever listens. All right, let's set the scene. Picture the year 1100. Europe, a mess, fragmented, broke, still dragging itself out of centuries of chaos. But swing your gaze east and south, and it's a completely different world. The Islamic civilization stretches from Spain all the way to Persia. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These aren't just cities. They're economic engines, intellectual powerhouses. Caravans loaded with silk and silver and spices are crisscrossing trade routes that make European roads look like dirt paths, because they mostly were. Scholars are debating astronomy, medicine, philosophy, law. Markets are buzzing. Money is flowing. The empire is rich. And here's the thing about getting rich fast. It changes people. It changes everything. Into this world of explosive commerce and growing inequality walks Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali, born in 1058 in Persia. Part philosopher, part legal scholar, part theologian, part troublemaker. Imagine someone equally comfortable explaining the nature of the human soul and why your currency system is broken. That was this guy. By his mid-30s, he'd already landed one of the most prestigious academic positions in the Islamic world. But prestige wasn't his thing. What made Al-Ghazali different, what made him dangerous, was that he refused to look at a booming economy and just nod along. He saw wealth growing, markets expanding, everyone getting richer on paper, and he thought, something's wrong here, something underneath, a civilization obsessed with accumulation, but losing its sense of purpose. Sound familiar? Yeah, it should. So Al-Ghazali asked a question that almost nobody had the guts to ask. What happens when a society gets wealthy faster than it gets wise? And to answer that, he went straight to the root, money itself. Now, here's where most people get surprised. This wasn't some religious figure shaking his fist at commerce from a pulpit. Al-Ghazali was doing something that wouldn't become common in Western thought for centuries. He was analyzing money as a system, its psychology, its social effects, its power to shape human behavior and ultimately determine whether nations survive or collapse. Where Aristotle treated money as a practical invention, and later economists would reduce it to equations, Al-Ghazali looked at what it does to people, how it warps incentives, how it builds or destroys trust, how it decides the fate of entire civilizations. And his starting point was deceptively simple. Money is a mirror. Think about that. A mirror by itself? Worthless. It has no value sitting alone in a room. Its entire purpose is to reflect something else. Money works the same way. Gold coins, silver coins, the metal doesn't matter. What matters is what money allows humans to do, trade, build, cooperate, connect. That's it. That's all money is supposed to be, a tool, a facilitator, not a god, not a goal, not something you stack in a room and worship. And modern economists love to act like they came up with this idea. Al-Ghazali wrote it down in the 11th century, while most of Europe still thought wealth meant how much land you could grab with a sword. But here's where it gets really interesting. From this foundation, Al-Ghazali built an argument that hits harder today than it did a millennium ago. Hoarded money is dead money. Wealth locked away in chests, hidden in vaults, buried underground, it's not just useless, it's actively destructive. Picture the economy as a living body, right? Money is the blood. It needs to circulate, feed workers, fund trade, support families, keep the whole organism alive. And when someone hoards it, when massive amounts of wealth just stop moving, it's like clamping an artery. The body starts dying, slowly at first,
then all at once. He described it as freezing the bloodstream of society. An 11th century scholar wrote that. You could drop that line into any modern critique of wealth concentration and nobody would blink.
But wait, he wasn't just complaining about greedy people. His argument went deeper, way deeper. When the wealthy hoard, they create artificial scarcity. Not because there aren't enough resources, but because circulation is blocked. Goods exist, labor exists, demand exists, but the money that's supposed to connect all of it, locked in someone's basement. So prices get weird, markets malfunction, and ordinary people suffer for no reason other than someone decided their pile of gold looked better sitting still. And that leads to his next target, speculation. Al-Ghazali had absolutely zero patience for merchants who manipulated prices, manufactured fake shortages, or waited for crises so they could jack up costs and profit from desperation. You know, the buy low during a disaster, sell high to desperate people strategy that some folks today call smart investing. He called it what it was, moral corruption, profit without contribution, extraction without creation. And here's the line that still cuts. Whoever profits from the suffering of others profits from corruption. Bam! Written 900 years ago, and it describes everything from predatory lending to crisis profiteering to, well, pick your favorite modern financial scandal. Take your pick. There are so many. But, and this is important, Al-Ghazali was not anti-business. He wasn't anti-profit. He wasn't telling everyone to take a vow of poverty and live in a monastery. The man believed in trade, strongly. He thought markets were natural, necessary, even noble when done right. His problem wasn't with making money. His problem was with making money dishonestly, cheating, lying, using rigged scales, hiding defects in products, manipulating information so the other side of a deal doesn't know what they're actually getting. Because here's what he understood. Markets only work when people trust each other. That's it. That's the whole secret. Every transaction, every contract, every handshake deal in a bazaar, it all runs on one invisible fuel, trust. And when trust dies, the economy follows right behind it every single time. He was essentially describing what modern economists would eventually call transaction costs, information asymmetry, and moral hazard. The same concepts, the same dynamics, just without the fancy jargon, and about 8 centuries earlier. No big deal. Now, Al-Ghazali also had something to say about work, real work. He argued that labor had inherent dignity, that money earned through genuine effort, through building, creating, contributing, that kind of wealth strengthened character. But money gained through manipulation, through scheming and gaming the system, that rotted a person from the inside out. And yeah, it sounds like moralizing, but the logic underneath was brutally practical. Societies where people contribute, they grow strong. Societies where people exploit, they crumble, not eventually, inevitably. But here's where it gets really relevant. Because Al-Ghazali didn't just point fingers at merchants and hoarders. He aimed straight at the people in charge. Medieval rulers had this wonderful habit, and by wonderful I mean catastrophic, of diluting their own coins. They'd take gold or silver currency and quietly reduce the precious metal content, stretch the budget, fund another war, build another palace. The coins looked the same on the outside, but they were worth less, every single one. In other words, stealth inflation, taxation without telling anyone you're taxing them, the government literally stealing purchasing power from every person holding their currency. Al-Ghazali didn't mince words. He called it theft, straight up, because that's what it was. The poor got hit hardest. They received weaker coins but paid the same prices. Trust in the marketplace eroded. The entire financial system destabilized from the top down. He believed government had a role in the economy, sure, protect fair markets, enforce honest dealing. But that role had limits. Leaders were supposed to be guardians of economic stability, not the ones destroying it for short-term political survival. And his warning was crystal clear. An unjust ruler destroys prosperity faster than any foreign invader ever could. I don't think that one needs a modern parallel explained. You're already thinking of 3 examples. But Al-Ghazali's warnings weren't theoretical. He was watching this happen in real time.
Political fragmentation was accelerating. Dynasties fought each other for legitimacy. Provincial governors squeezed their populations for more revenue. And every time a ruler felt control slipping through his fingers, guess what he grabbed first? The economy. Always the economy.
Some cranked taxes to crushing levels, others debased the currency, some flat out seized merchant assets, just took them. Others borrowed recklessly, shrugged, and left the bill for the next generation to figure out. None of it was new, and none of it, in Al-Ghazali's assessment, solved anything. Because he saw something most leaders refused to see. Corruption radiates downward, like poison dripping from the top of a well into every cup drawn from it. When a ruler cheats his people, the merchants think, well, why shouldn't I cheat my customers? When institutions abandon integrity, individuals abandon responsibility. And suddenly, the whole system, from the royal treasury to the neighborhood market stall, becomes one enormous chain reaction of distrust. His conclusion? Stark, simple, devastating. A society can survive being poor. It cannot survive being corrupt. Economic collapse, the real kind, the civilization-ending kind, almost never happens because a nation runs out of money or resources. It happens because trust breaks down, that invisible glue holding together every transaction, every contract, every currency, every institution. When it dissolves, even the richest nation on earth becomes fragile, brittle, ready to shatter. And from this understanding, his views on currency make perfect sense. Stability wasn't about having enough gold, it was about having enough honesty. Debasing coins wasn't just bad policy, it was betrayal. A ruler who tampered with currency wasn't being clever, he was robbing his own citizens in slow motion, one coin at a time. And here's the prediction that echoes across centuries. Al-Ghazali warned that if governments manipulated their currency too aggressively, too often, people would eventually lose faith. They'd abandon the local money entirely. They'd start using foreign currencies instead, stronger ones, ones they could actually trust. 1,000 years later, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina. Country after country where citizens literally flee their own money because the promises backing it have become worthless. People pushing wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread, stuffing foreign dollars under mattresses because their own currency is a joke. And right now, today, inflation anxieties, currency debates, central bank credibility crises, it's all the same pattern. The exact same pattern. Because Al-Ghazali understood something fundamental. Money is a belief system. The moment people stop believing, the system stops functioning. But he went even deeper than currency and taxes. He understood the messy, irrational, emotional creature at the center of every economy. Us. People hoard because they're afraid. They speculate because they're greedy. They cheat because they think nobody's watching. They manipulate money because money is easy to manipulate. They rationalize terrible behavior because, well, everyone else is doing it too, right? And when a society reaches the tipping point, when exploitation becomes normal, when cheating is just how business works, when nobody even pretends to care about fairness anymore, collapse isn't coming. Collapse has already started. You're just too busy counting your money to notice the floor disappearing beneath you. This drove one of his most powerful insights. You cannot fix a broken economy without fixing the broken incentives that created it. Laws matter, regulations matter, market structures matter, but underneath all of it, people making choices driven by fear, ambition, greed, desire. Unless your systems channel those impulses toward productive, honest behavior, the whole thing drifts toward corruption and self-destruction. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And that's why Al-Ghazali kept hammering the moral dimension. Not because he was preaching,
Because he was being practical. Wealth without responsibility isn't just spiritually hollow. It's a ticking bomb under the entire social order. Wealth itself? Not evil. But wealth without purpose, wealth detached from any sense of obligation to the community it came from, that's how civilizations die. A society grows strong when its members put in more than they take out, when the desire to accumulate is balanced by the obligation to contribute. But when that balance snaps, when profit becomes the only metric that matters and the welfare of the community becomes somebody else's problem, the system gets brittle, fragile, and eventually, it collapses under its own weight. Everyone pays, including the wealthy who are absolutely certain they were immune. They never are. They never, ever are.
Civilizations rise on balance. They die when that balance breaks. And now, look around. Tell me Al-Ghazali wasn't describing exactly where we are right now. A global economy where money moves at the speed of light, but meaning can't keep up. Wealth inequality approaching levels humanity hasn't seen in centuries. Markets that reward gambling over building. Trust in institutions dropping year after year after year. Inflation quietly eating your purchasing power while everyone pretends it's fine. Financial bubbles inflating, popping, inflating again with the regularity of a heartbeat. Every single problem he identified, playing out on a planetary scale. His critique of hoarding? That's today's debate about billionaires sitting on mountains of cash while entire communities crumble. His warnings about speculation? Housing crises, cryptomania, shadow banking, predatory markets. Pick one. His condemnation of debased currency. That's every monetary policy argument happening right now in every central bank on Earth. And his core belief that trust is the foundation of prosperity? That explains why countries with stable institutions, honest courts, predictable rules, and transparent governance consistently have stronger currencies and more resilient economies. What's genuinely unsettling is how little has actually changed. The technology is different, the speed is faster, the scale went from regional to global, but the human behaviors, identical. The same fear, the same greed, the same shortcuts, the same rationalizations. Al-Ghazali would look at our world today, at the runaway debt, the speculative frenzies, the widening inequality, the political gridlock, the institutional decay, and he would say exactly what he wrote 1,000 years ago. Where justice disappears, prosperity follows it out the door. And that's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. Economies don't collapse because the math stops working. They collapse because the people inside the system stop trusting each other, because the incentives reward the wrong behavior, because the institutions meant to protect fairness become the ones undermining it. Human emotion, human fear, human greed, human shortcuts. These are what push civilizations off cliffs. Not abstract formulas, not bad luck. Us. Al-Ghazali wasn't delivering sermons, he was describing reality. A reality economists still struggle to admit. Money isn't a machine, it's a moral ecosystem. And when the moral framework rots, the financial system rots right alongside it. Every single time. And as usual, nobody learned anything. So look, in an era of record debt, speculative excess, crumbling institutional trust, and financial anxiety that keeps people up at night, his message isn't just interesting historical trivia. It's a survival principle. If money becomes completely divorced from any sense of ethics or responsibility, the system breaks. Not might break, will break. Understanding that isn't just education, it's protection. Because history doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it'll crush you all the same. And we've been getting crushed by the same patterns for 1,000 years. Most people will scroll right past this and go back to wondering why everything feels broken. Al-Ghazali explained it 9 centuries ago. But sure, this time is different. This time we're smarter. This time the rules don't apply to us.
right? If you'd rather see the pattern before it sees you, Money Never Learns is right here. Subscribe button's waiting, and trust me, there's plenty more history nobody warned you about.